The year was 1999 and Pokemania was at a fever pitch. Red and Blue had taken the country by storm, the cards were sold out in every store, and the anime had captured the hearts and souls of fans everywhere. It was the beginning of one of the greatest franchises ever created, one that would go on to become the highest grossing franchise ever, a crown it will likely keep for a very, very long time. Pokemon is a masterclass at franchise marketing. The video games drew us in and opened the door for the anime, card games, and toys to take over our wallets. And while Pokemon Red and Blue set the stage, the anime is what brought the static 8-bit sprites to life, infusing them with personalities we could connect with. The problem was, Red and Blue were nothing like the anime. In an effort to bridge that narrative gap and give us fans something to play while Gold and Silver finished marinating, Game Freak released Pokemon Yellow on October 19th, 1999. Like many of us older fans, Pokemon Yellow was my second Pokemon game. I'd played Red a handful of times, but was always disappointed I could never build a team quite like Ash's. Sometimes I just wanted to journey through Kanto the way Ash did, but it was way too hard to trade for the two missing starters. Pokemon Yellow remedied all of that in the best way possible. It quickly became my preferred way to play Gen 1 and remains that way to this day. Sure, some might argue that having all three starters makes the game too easy or reduces your choices as to what team you can build, but it doesn't really. You don't have to use any of the three original starters. You could use one or two or none. You're going to miss out on having them for the early part of the game, sure, but they can quickly catch up to the rest of your team. And it makes completing the decks so much easier because it eliminates the need to trade for the other two starters. I bought it immediately after it released and played through several times, reliving the adventure of Ash or carving out my own adventure. That original cartridge was sadly sold off long ago, but I did buy the game from the 3DS eShop several years ago and put in a good effort to complete the decks, ultimately falling short because I had no one to trade with. Man, some things change and some things stay the same, don't they? Among other small changes made to the core gameplay were different sprites introduced for Yellow, which were designed to more closely resemble the anime. Pikachu, for one, went from being this squat round mouse to the straightened up cute guy we all fell in love with. Everyone got a new sprite, and while the Yellow sprites are closer in design to how the Pokemon would look going forward, in some cases the design stayed pretty much the same, but they just got better, more detailed sprites or better poses. Some may disagree, especially if you played Red or Blue a lot before Yellow came out, but I think it's fair to say that on the whole, the Yellow sprites were an improvement. One other little change they made to Pokemon Yellow was adding a bit more color for those who played on a Game Boy Color. Red or Blue would just have this overall color applied across everything, but for Yellow, while it wasn't a Game Boy Color game, and it lacked a lot of the detailed colors those games had, it did manage to add some color in certain spots. Now each sprite had its own color, and the health bar took on that all too familiar trait of going from green to yellow to red. Best of all, when you entered a town, it would change colors, and the really neat thing about it is the towns in Gen 1 were named after colors, so of course, the towns changed to those colors. When you step into Vermilion City, the color changes to cerulean. I don't think I even knew what cerulean meant back then. That I did not pick up on until I played on my 3DS a few years back, but it is a nice little addition. Well played, Game Freak. Recently, I had a desire to reinvigorate my love of Pokemon, which I've talked about on this channel a bit. And to do that, I decided to play through Pokemon Yellow in an effort to play more games instead of just talk about games, and to see if the game I loved as a child is still a game worth playing today. Oh, and this time I played this on a Game Boy Advance SP because nostalgia's a hell of a drug. Let's go! Okay, well, to start, I did actually power this up on a very old school DMG Game Boy just to see how it looked, and boy does it look rough. I do not envy anyone who had to play on this horrendous screen. If that's some nostalgia for you, that's great, but I never had one of these back when I was a kid, so I do not like this one bit. The SP is such an upgrade, especially over the original Game Boy. I mean, It is like a decade newer, right? So we all know how Pokemon starts. You wake up, name your character, try to leave town because your mom's overbearing, and get stopped by the crazy old professor who lives next door. He then insists you follow him to his lab and gives you your choice of a weapon or a pet or a friend to help keep you safe from all of the rabid Pokemon who apparently want to attack you as soon as you step into the grass. This game was supposed to make us want to go outside, right? The only problem is we're playing yellow, so instead of getting to choose between a fire, water, or grass type Pokemon, we're stuck with this cranky Pikachu that insists on following us. But right away we can see just how much thought and care Game Freak put into making this a better Pokemon game. They took an already packed in game and added an entirely new mechanic to it. And they even left in some glitches for us. Not only does Pikachu loyally follow you around wherever you go, he interacts with you and the environment, falling asleep if you talk to Jigglypuff in the Pokemon Center. Being confused by Bill transformed into a Pokemon and lighting up when he learns a new move. He's also the only Pokemon in the game that says its name, which apparently is a controversial topic, but I'm used to it from the anime, so I kind of like it. He also starts off cranky, just like in the anime, but over time, as you level him up, treat him well, don't let him faint, or use a potion when he's fully healed because it's still Gen 1 Pokemon, and what would it be without glitches? He becomes happy and practically falls in love. None of this was in red and blue, mind you, and while it's only applicable to this Pikachu, it's an impressive mechanic added to the base game and then expanded on in future ones. If you can't tell already, I was a big fan of the anime when I was younger, and one thing I took from that is that I never nicknamed my Pokemon. Pidgey's Pidgey man and Pikachu's Pikachu, but for this playthrough, I decided to deviate from my norm and try nicknaming everyone. So this Pikachu is now Sparkles, and together we set out on an adventure. After giving Gary and his Eevee the boot, mind you. RNG for the win. After completing Oak's errand, I went north and ran into one of the early issues with the yellow version. You see, unlike the anime's Pikachu, Sparkles is pretty useless against Brock, so I needed someone who could stand toe-to-toe with his rock type, and for that I went looking for a fighting type. And who better early in the game than Mankey, who I'm naming Cranky because, yeah, I'm not very original with this, guys. So no, I'm not playing through this just like the anime. I have done that before, but that's a challenge in itself and one I wasn't quite interested in this time. Though if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know down below. Instead, I played how I wanted and with the Pokemon I wanted. Now armed with Cranky and Sparkles, we again take on Gary and defeat him. This is actually an optional battle, but it does affect who Eevee evolves into, so if you care about that, check the requirements to see just what needs to happen for Eevee to evolve into Flareon, Jolteon, or Vaporeon. Next up is Viridian Forest, where I picked up a Caterpie whom I named Filler because, well, quite frankly, he's not going to be on the team long. Sorry, Filler. He quickly evolves into Metapod, one of the most frustrating Pokemon to beat in the early part of the game because they just use Harden over and over and over again. Ugh, the nightmares. Once through the forest, we're able to take on Brock. You may notice the footage jumping around a lot. I played this over several weeks, and in some short, some long durations. A great thing about Pokemon is how easy it is to play for a few minutes or a few hours. The game mechanics are pretty simple and straightforward. I know there's an advantage because I've played for so long, but while the game mechanics can run deep, especially in later generations when you get into EVs and IVs, abilities, and held items, a simple straight playthrough of Gen 1 is not that challenging so long as you have a basic understanding of type advantages, which Cranky thankfully has against rock types. After defeating Brock and collecting our first badge, we find ourselves in Mount Moon. I'll just say it up front, I hate the caves in Pokemon. I just hate the constant random encounters you have to deal with and the mazes. Just not what I'm looking for, sorry. I know it's been a part of Pokemon since the beginning, but it's always been my least favorite part. I get it, it's a nice little breakup of the overworld, but boy do I like to buy repels when I can because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to explore only to be stopped every 5 steps by a Zubat you can't run away from. But after making our way through the caves, picking up a Geodude along the way, who I named Balboa because, you know, Rocky, We can pick up the Dome Fossil and trigger our next challenge in anime callback, Team Rocket. Team Rocket is a major subplot in the original game, but in the anime, they're pretty much just replaced by Jesse and James trying to steal Pikachu every episode. They're more comic relief, not legitimate threat. In Yellow, we finally get to encounter Jesse and James, taking on their Meowth, Coughing, and Ekans. I still remember playing these very limited encounters and just savoring every moment of them because they were, in my mind, the closest you could get to the anime, an actual battle with Pikachu against Meowth. Game Freak knew what we wanted, or at least what I wanted, and they delivered. Of course, just like in the anime, they're no match for our team, and they go blasting off. But don't worry, we'll see them again. Moving on from Mount Moon, we reach Vermilion City, where we finally get the chance to receive our first gift starter Pokemon. Here's where the true beauty of Pokemon Yellow shines, the ability to get every starter in one playthrough. I don't think there's been another game besides the Let's Go remakes that let you do that. But the starters are always such popular Pokemon. I mean, you start your journey with them. They're usually pretty powerful overall, especially when they reach their final evolution. And typically because you've used them so much, they're one of your strongest Pokemon. They're always either fire, water, grass, with a different type mixed in sometimes. So they have good stab moves. They're strong against a decent number of gyms or the Elite Four. They're your companions throughout the game, and there's agency there because you picked them. You choose which one you wanted to train. They weren't just the only option. You get to decide how your adventure starts with your starter. And in Gen 1, that kind of determines the difficulty early on. You want an easy path? Go with Bulbasaur. You want a hard path? Go with Charmander. Not going to be very effective against the first two gyms. And with the first game, I mean, who didn't love every one of these guys? Game Freak giving us the ability to get every one of them in a single playthrough, just like Ash, was amazing and a big reason why I love this game over so many others in the series. Unfortunately, the first one we can get, Bulbasaur, requires our Pikachu to have a very high happiness, and well, mine's just not there yet. I remember not knowing how this mechanic worked when younger and getting frustrated because even the guide doesn't really explain how it works, but yes, there is a little trick where you can use a potion on an already healthy Pikachu and his happiness will rise even though you won't have used the potion. So you can just use the same potion over and over again to build up his happiness until he's happy enough to convince the caretaker that you're a good trainer, so she should give you Bulbasaur. I wanted to try giving it a shot without that glitch, but eventually I gave in. But moving on, we can go north and we're challenged by Gary again. My man's always one step ahead, but not quite strong enough to stop me. With him sulking off again, we have to get through this bridge of trainers with a prize at the end, as well as an invitation to join Team Rocket. Ha! No way. But with him out of the way, we can get the next starter Pokemon, Charmander. And this time, he's just given to us for free. Yay! And we'll name him Charmer because, I mean, is he not? Bill's our next stop, and with Pikachu's help and confusion, we can free him and get the SS Anne ticket we need to continue on. With that in our pocket, we can go challenge Misty, the Water Master, who should be no match for our Pikachu, right? He easily wipes out her Staryu, but unfortunately gets floored by her Starmie, as does the rest of my team. Next time, I change up the strategy, poisoning Starmie right off the bat and using some potions to overcome its pretty stout defenses. Since I'm done with Cerulean City, I decided to use the glitch to get Bulbasaur, who I named Cedar, and with the Cascade badge in hand, we can go walk right through a crime scene and attack the burglar on our own because apparently the police are incompetent at doing a proper search. Moving south to Vermilion City, we capture a Pidgeotto who will be our chariot. Pidgeotto is a useful Pokemon, but not the one I'm really looking to capture. That's an Abra, by far the most OP Pokemon in Gen 1. Well, I mean, Alakazam is, not Abra, but Abra is an elusive little guy, so we'll have to keep trying to get one. In Vermilion City, I deposit Cranky so I can take out Chariot. Not that he's going to be of any use against Lieutenant Surge's electric types. We also receive the bike voucher so we can grab that overpriced bike and actually move at an acceptable speed. If only it didn't take 10 seconds to find and select the bike every time we wanted to use it. Ah, Gen 1 mechanics. Then try again to capture an Abra before he teleports away and get lucky on that one. Now we have our Spoon Man. And again, have to go retrieve him from the box because that's just another one of Gen 1's shortcomings. When your party's full, a new Pokemon automatically goes to the box. I mean, you have to go to a computer to get them out. It's so much nicer when you can just replace Pokemon you captured right away. Oh, and if your Pokemon box just so happens to be full, each box can only hold 20 Pokemon after all, the game doesn't even let you try to catch a Pokemon. And it doesn't tell you a box is full until you try to capture that Pokemon. Yes, I've totally had a Pokemon I wanted to capture and been thwarted by that terrible coding decision. It's the worst when it's a legendary deep in a cave. In order for Spoonman to be useful, we had to do some grinding to get him to evolve into Kadabra and have a Pokemon that's going to anchor our team for the long term. Next, we can breeze through the SSN, evolve Cedar, and beat Gary once again. Also, I feel like this could have used another Jesse and James battle. I know Team Rocket's not on the SSN at all, but they could be doing something fishy, right? All this battling just so we can get cut, so we can finally gain access to the third gym. Like, why is the gym locked off behind a tree? Is that safe? Is that up to code? What happens if there's a fire? This is very bad city planning. Along our path to challenge Lieutenant Surge, Charmer evolves into Charmeleon. That's nice. And once inside, we can find the hidden switch to unlock the door and reach Lieutenant Surge. He really was hiding from everyone. Now, Lieutenant Surge is a great place to showcase another change Game Freak made to the yellow version of Gen 1. In Red and Blue, Lieutenant Surge had a Voltorb, Pikachu, and a Raichu. But in Yellow, he only has a Raichu, just like the Lieutenant Surge in the anime. And on top of that, the Raichu in Yellow is at level 28 compared to the level 24 or less of its Pokemon in Red and Blue. They made changes to the gym leaders in Yellow to better reflect what Ash faced in the anime. So some of the Pokemon do change here and there to better align with the anime, which I think is a nice little touch. And we'll see a little as we go along that in general, it feels like the gym leaders and Elite Four in Yellow have stronger Pokemon overall, but that is at least a little bit balanced by the fact that they also tend to have fewer Pokemon. Still, I think having a stronger Pokemon makes it a tad more difficult than having an additional weaker Pokemon. Surge's Raichu is easily taken out by Balboa, though he does sort of take himself out as well. That's gonna be a common thread with this guy, I'm not gonna lie. And here we can see another of the shortcomings with Gen 1, something they thankfully have alleviated in later generations, and that's the limited space in your backpack. In Gen 1, you can only carry 20 different items. You can carry up to 99 of each item, but only 20 different items. And once again, if your backpack was full, you just couldn't pick up an item. And it doesn't warn you when it gets full. So when Lieutenant Surge here tries to give me a Thunderbolt, I can't accept it because my backpack is full. Of course, items can be stored into PC, but that too has a limit of 50 items. You can't even collect all of the TMs and HMs without going over that 50 item limit. Nor can you discard important items that you need to progress the story, even if you've already progressed past that. So items like the keycard or lift key or SS ticket have to take up some space in your PC for the rest of the game. Meaning you really need to do some planning on what you need and what you don't when you're traveling, or you might need to get rid of something valuable because you need to pick up an even more valuable item. It's these little quality of life issues that really plague the Gen 1 games. These things are all remedied by later generations, most by Gen 2 even, but they really make journeying through Gen 1 a bit of a particular pain, especially if you're not prepared for it and don't know about it. For all of us who played this when it came out, we remember it well, and we hate it a lot. With a Thunder Badge in our pocket, we can get our final gift starter, Squirtle, whom I named Spritzer. He needs a good trainer, and I guess because I beat the hiding Lieutenant Surge, that makes me a good trainer. Now, of the 3 starters, Bulbasaur was the first one I ever picked. This was before I really knew anything about Pokemon or stats or moves. I had just read that Bulbasaur was the easiest Pokemon to start with, and seeing as you face a rock and water type gym first, that holds true. I've played through with Charmander, who's probably my favorite Gen 1 starter a few times, but maybe only once with Squirtle. I really like being able to play with all 3 starters because they're just some of my favorite Pokemon. I get that some people might look at it like if you have Pikachu and the 3 starters, that only leaves you with 2 roster spots to fill out for all the other Pokemon in the game. But like I said earlier, you don't have to use any of them. I just like having the choice to do it when I want without having to go through the headache of trading starters and restarting another game over and over to do that. With Vermilion City cleared, we can make our way through the blackened out rock tunnel, meaning we have to get Filler back out so we can waste the HM Flash on it instead of a Pokemon I plan to use for the rest of the game. On the way through Rock Tunnel, Spritzer evolves into War Turtle, which is just a fantastic design. I think we can all admit that. Finally, we get out of the cave and reach Lavender Town where there's a ghost problem. So let's go investigate it and run into Gary while we're at it. He's not too much of a challenge this time, and this is where a bit of variability comes into play with the Gen 1 games. It's here where you can, if you choose, complete the next few towns and gyms in different orders. The guide I have from when I was a kid lays it out like this. Travel from Lavender Town to Celadon City using the underground pathway because these guards are thirsty and therefore won't let you pass unless you distract them with water. What kind of customer service is that? After Celadon, you return to Lavender, head to Saffron, and then down to Fuchsia. And that's what I've always done. But did you know you don't have to follow that order? You can actually bypass the entire Game Corner Team Rocket hideout in Celadon City by using a Pokédoll on the mysterious ghost Pokemon haunting the tower. That unlocks the Pokeflute earlier than intended, so you can reach Fuchsia City. You can also challenge Sabrina, Erica, and Koga in any order. Even without bypassing the game corner, you can technically do that. It's sort of a weird part of the game because Erica's Pokemon are lower level 30s, but then all of a sudden the level jumps to 50 for Sabrina and high 40s for Koga. It's a pretty steep level jump without a lot of time in between. If you're not careful, you're going to try tackling a gym either way under leveled or way over leveled. But for this playthrough, we're not going to do any skipping ahead because the game corner is a big part of the game's story and it's partly what my channel's named after. So if you like that and you're enjoying this video, go ahead and hit subscribe. So after fleeing from the ghost tower, we can make our way to Celadon City. Sneak behind here and grab ourselves an EV, which I aptly named Freevee. Now we need a game case and to get stuck in this house until this mofo moves. Come on, my guy, get out the way. I can then also buy a drink to give to the guards around Saffron City. Of course, Saffron City is pretty much closed off thanks to the Team Rocket guards set up all over the city, so we head back to Celadon City and do a little old school underage gambling. Come on, baby, daddy needs to do Porygon. I rarely ever get Porygon. He's just too much work to do. Then let's trigger the switch behind the grunt and work our way through the maze of the game corner to face off against Jesse and James once again. But they don't last too long before they're blasting off again. And with them out of the way, we can take on Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket. He's not too tough here, thanks to our type advantages. Spritzer easily handles his Onix and his Rhyhorn, while Cedar plays cleanup for Persian. With Giovanni disappearing, we can pick up the Silph Co and head off to battle Erica, the Grass-type gym leader. She's only a pain because our Pokemon like to put you to sleep every chance they get. Charmer's a bit too weak despite his type advantages, but Spoonman can fill in thanks to his. That is, with a few revives along the way because grinding is my bane in Pokemon, and after all this time, I finally realized you can't take potions with you to the next game. You earn all this money from battling, you might as well use it. With Saffron still crawling with Team Rocket guards, we keep moving on to Lavender Town so we can get rid of that ghost. Poor Pikachu. The Silph Co reveals the ghost to be a Marowak that Team Rocket killed, which is a bit dark, but Pokemon's always had a bit of a dark side to it when you dig beneath the surface. You can't catch the dead Pokemon because that would be weird, so you just knock it out and be prepared to fight Jesse and James once again. This time their Pokemon have evolved into Weezing and Arbok, making them slightly more challenging, but not challenging at all for Kadabra. Poison is just too weak against Psychics. Once they blast off and clear out, you receive the Pokeflute from Mr. Fuji, which we need to continue our quest to become Pokemon Masters. And I even managed to get a little playtime in on the plane as my wife and I went to Disney. Yes, let me know down below how much you hate Disney. I get it. I hate it too, but I also love it, especially the Japanese pavilion in Epcot. If you're ever there, be sure to check it out. They always have this section dedicated to Pokemon, as well as several other Japanese franchises. It's probably the closest I'll get to Japan for a long time, though I do really want to visit one day. I used the little time I had to work my way through the Silph Company, where Balboa evolved into Graveler and I eventually ran into Gary again. His team's gotten a little stronger as expected, but no crazy level jumps at this point. By now, his Eevee has evolved into Jolteon. Thankfully, Spoonman and some revives makes getting past Gary quick work, and we can go on to face our final challenge from Team Rocket's Jesse and James, which is just so sad. They're one of those small additions to the yellow version that helps make it stand out against the others and connect it with the anime. And while I love that they pop up every now and then in the game, I'd love to have seen them more. There's at least one additional moment later in the game where they would have made sense and still keeping with the anime. They could have popped up anywhere and it would have worked, at least for me. As is, this is the final send-off for Jesse, James, and Meowth. Until the next playthrough, guys. In the next room, we find Giovanni holding the president of Silph Company hostage. This time, he's added a few poison Pokemon to his team. Unfortunately for him, this is Gen 1 and Kadabra can pretty much wipe them out while Cedar can take care of his other rock-type Pokemon. Defeated again, Giovanni slips away so we can rescue the president and be rewarded with the ever so elusive Master Ball. The one and only Master Ball, mind you, unless we want to pull off a little glitch later on. But with Team Rocket cleared out of the city, we can take on the 2 gyms in Saffron City. The Fighting Dojo, which isn't an official gym anymore after they were pushed aside, which isn't hard to imagine since fighting types are also so weak to psychic types. I mean, even Charmer's able to take out Hitmonchan, despite a 10 level difference. But defeating the dojo does earn us the choice between Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, and I choose Hitmonchan. Now we can take on Sabrina's psychic type gym. She has 3 Pokemon, all of the Abra line, and all at level 50, which is kind of an interesting concept because you can really get a feel for how much more powerful the evolved form is over the others. In this case, Abra's pretty simple to take out because his only moves are Teleport and Flash, which don't do much in this situation. But the rest are a bit more difficult, especially seeing as I was very underleveled compared to her level 50 Pokemon. Spoonman was my highest level Pokemon, but his attacks were ineffective against them. But Balboa proved his worth, coming in and dealing some massive damage with his self-destruct, completely wiping out her level 50 Kadabra. Your sacrifice is not in vain, Balboa, especially not when I can revive you and do it again. Please don't hate me. Alakazam proved to be much more difficult. He used Recover to keep regaining health, and Balboa's self-destruct wouldn't even take away half his HP. It just goes to show you how much the stat boosts from evolving really do matter and why not evolving my Kadabra really ramps up the difficulty. This battle was a true test of using everything at my disposal to keep my Pokemon from fainting and to revive them after they did, all while trying to do enough damage over enough turns to whittle away at Alakazam's health. And so, after several revives and self-destructs and some poor attack choices by Alakazam, I was down to my last Pokemon, good old Pikachu, and his quick attack to take him out. That was by far the toughest battle I've had, but it's always a great feeling to pull out a win when you really shouldn't have. I should have grinded a bit more to raise their level, but nah. Now that we've cleared those areas and have the Pokeflute in our bag, we can go wake up those big behemoths in our way. I don't think I realized until I played these on the 3DS that there were actually 2 Snorlaxes available in Gen 1. Maybe I just forgot. Snorlax, like Kadabra, is a bit OP in Gen 1, thanks to the little glitch where you don't have to recharge after using Hyper Beam if the opponent faints. With a power of 150, Hyper Beam is the most powerful move in Gen 1, and while the intended effect of having to recharge helps nerf that, the glitch makes it one of the best moves in the game. With a bit of training, you can level this Snorlax up pretty good and one-shot a lot of opponents on your way to victory. While I have used Snorlax on several playthroughs, this time I only captured this Snorlax and didn't add him to the party. Working our way around the lower part of Kanto, we make it to Fuchsia City, where we have to go through the Safari Zone so we can get access to 2 HMs that we need to continue on with our adventure. I understand the idea of HMs and how they can be used to make progress easier, like Fly, and how they're really just there to limit where and when you can go places using natural barriers, but they're a big pain in the ass. Really, they are. They take up a move slot, and sometimes you need 3 or 4 to progress through an area, and that means you need to use them on Pokemon in your party. Oh, and they can't be forgotten, which I think is just silly. At least most of the moves are decent. Fly is not bad, Surf and Strength are usable, but Cut's pretty weak, and Flash is pretty useless. Later generations altered the HMs a bit, and then eventually they were removed altogether, which I do think is best. At this point, it's an archaic game mechanic that's best left to the older generations. While in the Safari Zone, we can pick up the HM Surf, as well as the Warden's Teeth, which for some reason he lost in the Safari Zone. Delivering those to the Warden earns us the Strength HM. Koga's simple enough because his poison Pokemon are just so weak to Kadabra, and for some strange reason, his Pokemon are weaker than Erika's. Kadabra easily sweeps this team. Once Charmer evolves into Charizard, I teach him Fly to make getting around a little bit easier. With Surf in hand, we can finally sail the high seas, where Cedar evolves into Venusaur. We reach the Seafoam Islands, another dreaded cave, but at least deep in this cave, once we make our way through the maze of boulders, we can encounter our first legendary. I love catching the legendaries. It's such a nice little challenge in there, so I always make an effort to catch every legendary in every playthrough. Articuno is a great legendary, especially for the endgame because its ice attacks will practically wipe out every one of Lance's Pokemon. But we're just going to catch it and store it away for now. One thing I recently realized about catching legendaries in Gen 1 is that if the Pokemon is not going to be caught by your Pokeball, it will always miss. You won't get a 1 or 2 wobble animation at all, and if you get any animation of the ball capturing the Pokemon, it's going to be a successful catch. Not sure if that's a mistake or intentional omission from the dev team, but it at least gives you that hope when you're trying to catch low-rate legendary Pokemon. If you see an animation, you already know you got it. With the legendary bird Articuno in the PC box, we can move on from the Seafoam Islands to Cinnabar Island, which is a much smaller town and honestly a bit disappointing at this point. There's just not much to do. Sure, it has the Burned Mansion, which is a great place to pick up some of the scant Gen 1 lore, and there's the lab where you can get your fossil resurrected, but it just feels a bit underwhelming after the past few towns. I mean, I honestly think the island's more famous for the missing no glitch than anything else. It doesn't have a Team Rocket hideout or a giant store or Safari Zone. It's just kind of small and quickly passed through. Unfortunately for us, the gym's locked until you get through the Burned Mansion and find the key, so let's get that over with and face off against Blaine's Fire-type Pokemon. They're pretty strong, but not too bad, seeing as they're still around level 50, which is where Sabrina was 2 gyms ago. Spritzer manages to hold his own against Ninetales, and Spoonman does clean up on the rest. Now that we can fly, we can just zip right up to Vermilion City and come face to face with the final gym leader, who just so happens to be none other than Giovanni. Along the route to reach Giovanni, Spritzer evolves into Blastoise, so now all 3 starters are in their final form, and my team is in its final form, ready to take on the Elite Four once I beat Giovanni again. His Pokemon are a bit stronger than before, but he was no problem then and no problem now for our well-constructed team, even if his Pokemon are about 20 levels higher than some of mine. Disgraced once again by a kid, Giovanni vows to disband Team Rocket, and we have saved countless Pokemon from their evil clutches, and delivered justice for that poor Cubone's mother. With all 8 badges in hand, we can finally head off to the Elite Four, but not before once again defeating Gary. There's no way that loser can beat the Elite Four if he can't even beat me. But in order to get to the Elite Four, we have to get through Victory Cave, which gives us a chance to face off against our second legendary bird, Moltres. I do like Moltres' design. It's just so fire. After getting his health down pretty good, it takes a lot, and I mean a lot, of Pokeballs to finally add him to my collection. And I just realized I never paralyzed him, and I easily could have with Pikachu.
Caught it.
No wonder it took so long. Ugh, idiot. The Elite Four is all that's standing between me and becoming a Pokemon Master. And because I hate grinding, I just go for it. After draining my built-up bank account on revives, potions, and Ultra Balls, I know I'm going to lose, and lose a lot before I can get through them all. That's fine. First up is Lorelei, and I've always found her to actually be one of the toughest, even though she's first. It's her Pokemon, her ice type, that always have strong water moves that just seem to overpower most of the Pokemon I choose to play with. I mean, Graveler's weak to ice and water, Venusaur's weak to ice moves, Charizard's weak to water, Blastoise is ineffective, Pikachu's just a bit too weak to be too effective against most of them, not to mention some have moves like Rest to bring them back to health. Kadabra's about the only one who can consistently score a victory, but even he has trouble sweeping her team, not to mention that Jinx can resist his moves pretty easily. It always feels like I beat her in one attempt, and then in the next one I fail because of a critical hit or missed attack, and then seesaw back and forth for a few attempts until my Pokemon gain a few more levels to the point I can get through no problem. But eventually I did make it past Lorelei and moved on to Bruno, who's probably the easiest to get past. I mean, his rock type are pushovers for Blastoise or Venusaur, and his fighting are no match for Kadabra. Once he's pushed out of the way, we can go to Agatha, who's also easily disposed of thanks to the only ghost type in Gen 1 also being poison, making them weak to psychic types. And also thanks to the fact that the only ghost type move in Gen 1 is Nightshade, which does a flat 40 HP no matter what. They don't get any stab benefits at all. Yep, just more poor design, but we can forgive them for making such a remarkable game overall, right? Now we can go face Lance, the champion, or at least the public champion. His dragon types are a bit of a pain, especially thanks to the fact that his Pokemon don't have to recharge after OHKOing me. He's a struggle to get past, but eventually I managed to pull it off consistently just to be told that I was too late. Someone else had beaten Lance and claimed the title of champion themselves. Who could that be? There's not like anyone else has stopped me before. Oh, yeah, right. I guess it's Gary, isn't it? Yeah. Well, luckily, Gary's team is a bit more balanced, even if they have somehow jumped like 15 levels since the last time we met just before Victory Road. Someone's been stashing rare candies in their bag. Still, since I can plan ahead and make sure my Pokemon have the type advantage, Gary actually isn't that tough to beat. He has no OP moves or any cheap tricks, just a pretty standard battle at the end of the day. And after I beat him, Professor Oak arrives, congratulates me, and sends me back out to complete the dex, something I've never ever done in any Pokemon game, and not something I'm going to do this playthrough. But I will go back and collect the legendaries I missed, starting with Zapdos, who I literally caught on the first throw. What are the odds? I guess, well, like maybe 1 in 26? Wow. And now that I am champion, I can venture into the unknown dungeon to take on the mysterious Mewtwo, the most OP of OP. Mewtwo, of course, is a bit of a bear to catch thanks to that constant usage of Recover. Thankfully, Pikachu can easily paralyze it to keep it in check, but still, it took a lot of whittling down the health again and again and again to keep its health low enough to even give my Pokeballs a shot. And it took a lot of Pokeballs, but after 2 tries, because I ran out of Pokeballs, and several Hyper Potions to keep Spoon Man alive, I managed to capture the legendary Pokemon and end my journey through Kanto and Pokemon Yellow. Of course, having played Pokemon Yellow several times as a kid, I'm very used to the game, its mechanics, and its unique quirks that accompany all Gen 1 games. So I can play through this without missing a beat and enjoy almost every minute of it. If you've never played it though, and you've never played Gen 1, or you really hate Gen 1, you heathen, well, you still might want to consider it. It is the closest we've ever gotten and probably ever will get to having a Pokemon experience that closely resembles the anime. Not even the remakes, in my opinion, capture the magic of the anime the way Yellow does. Sure, they look better, but the mechanics are so altered from what Pokemon is that it just doesn't play the same. There's nothing quite like throwing on some old school Season 1 of Pokemon and following along with Ash as you strive to make your own journey through Kanto. It is quintessential Pokemon with all its minor and major flaws, and it is still one of the best games I've ever played. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.